Welcome to this bonus on building your platform with Delia Peterson, founder of the written podcast agency, Copywriter and Creative Non-Fiction Writer, who is going hard on business, NFTs, and community. She is also community manager at Impact Theory University and the Impact Theory YouTube Copywriter. Welcome, Delia.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
I'm so glad you're here. So this is really for someone who might not have experience in podcasting and is looking for, they have an interest and looking for a way to get their message across, to reach more people, things like that. So yeah, you had a podcast, Between the Highlights, where you featured entrepreneurs, and what I love about it was really the reality of entrepreneurship. So not just the highs, but also the lows and everywhere in between. So just if you could just kind of like explain a little bit of the experience you had going into that, how you gained the confidence to do that, and just kind of like what it was like to actually launch a podcast.
So thank you for this opportunity. Well, first off, getting into it was easy. I had zero experience, no clue what I was doing. I was really just a ball of excited nerves to, I guess, like talk to people and get their stories and share it with the community. It was more so internal within ITU that I mostly promoted the episodes that I did record. Although they were published in public, like on Spotify, they were available on like Google Podcasts and stuff like that. So they were distributed, but I wasn't really focused on like doing it for the purpose of like growing a platform super large or, monetizing a podcast. I was really focused on value, how I could add value to the people that I was interviewing and how I could add value to the community that I was a part of. And I thought that the podcast would be a great way to introduce these amazing people that I thought were incredible to an amazing community, thinking, whatever their business, whatever their specialty, whatever their experience is, there's over 2,000 people in the community. Somebody might need their services or somebody would probably benefit from connecting. So that was a reason that I started it. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I started my podcast recording on Zoom with my wired earphones. Like that's what I started with. I tried looking into, I did the research on like YouTube and articles on like how to start a podcast. And it was by this microphone and here's a Rodecaster. And they had like all of these things that were out there and available, and how to set up your studio space and how to create this editing, all of it. It was just so overwhelming to me. I felt like it really detracted from the joy of it. I thought it detracted from the passion that I had, which brought me to wanting to do it, which was just to highlight people. As a writer, I thought it was also self-serving in the way that it gave me content to write about. And I wanted to really have some type, I didn't feel like I had content to practice reporting, interviewing, researching people. And I didn't have like anything of substance to really like practice my creative nonfiction writing with. So this was just a way to do everything in one shot. And that was how I got started. That was like what I was thinking going into it. And then I just started like with the very, very bare minimum. I'm like, I don't know if podcasting is something that I really want to do. I am a single mom. I have 2 kids that were, in Catholic school at the time. I didn't have money to just throw away into podcasting equipment, subscriptions, editors, and all this other stuff. So I just needed my production and my process to be as simple as possible. And I really just focused 100% on content. Was the audio audible? Like I wasn't worried if it was crisp and like if I had the sound right, or as long as there wasn't a train going by or a plane flying overhead and you could hear us, I thought that was great because you could hear the conversation. And as long as my writing was on point and getting better, and it made the person that I interviewed and spent time with, as long as they felt seen and heard and valued and felt like I showed that I highlighted them in the best way in their story, I was happy. That for me, I checked all the boxes. That was the metrics I used to decide what was a win when I started the podcast. And so Does
Yeah,
that
I'd love,
answer?
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to highlight two things there. So specifically how you did it to serve the community you were a part of, which was ITU, Impact Theory University, which is full of entrepreneurs. So it's so important for people to realize that you don't have to do everything and that you can just serve the community you're in. So if you're a writer and you want to serve the writing community, go ahead and feature other authors or poets or writers. And when I was doing Submission 52, I was featuring poets, and that was a great way to kind of like network with the poets and it really like make those meaningful connections, because when you interview someone, you know them in such a personal way that really like just interacting online, it's takes so much time to like get to that level of knowing someone. And I was doing Zoom calls and like coaching with people on Twitter and like just like having that personal like face-to-face interaction. I know it's still over the computer, but it's something that it just really emphasizes like the importance of real connection and kind of like connecting on interests and things like that. So just remember, you don't have to serve everyone, just serve your community. And then this idea that you started with written content and that it was an expression of your creative nonfiction writing. And I love that because it actually brought you on this beautiful journey. So I know you, so I actually know the journey. And you started with between the highlights and doing the blog posts that were accompanying the actual interview, and you housed that on your website. And then you actually started doing the written podcast agency because you saw that there weren't a lot of blog posts that were accompanying these audio files. So yeah, it was just so interesting how that's what started the written podcast agency, and then how that turned into copywriting for Impact Theory and doing their YouTube channel. So Impact Theory has a YouTube channel and Delia does the copywriting for them. So I'd love for you, because when I started my podcast, Artistic Spirit, you did tell me not to just do a podcast and do audio files and distribute them, but also to do a YouTube channel and to write show notes with it and to like link all the other things, my resources and things like that. So I'd love for you to just talk about the benefit of having audio and actual video on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of podcasts being on YouTube because it's your audio, as you said, it's your video. There's so many different components of it that touch on like all senses. Some people that listen to your podcast, they may actually be more visual people. They may be more visual in their learning style. Some people like to read. And there's other reasons why I think written content is king, but as far as like attracting the people that you're trying to reach, people can't search audio. Like you can't type in, I want to listen, I want to figure out how to do this. That content on Google, like typing in that in the search bar in Google is not going to search the audio files. It needs to be somewhere in your written content for it to be searchable. YouTube has the component of adding all three of these things together. So where you do have show notes on Apple, you do have show notes on Spotify, you can add those things in there. It's the fact that, I mean, in all of these platforms, if we're honest, they're all selfish in this respect that they want to keep they're using your content, they're leveraging your content and your ability to market to bring people to their platform, and they want to keep people on their platform. So Apple wants to get your listeners to Apple and they want to keep them on Apple. They don't want them going to anywhere else. Spotify is the same, YouTube is the same. But I think the difference is that you're a little more searchable, in my opinion, on YouTube because you're able to add more of the written piece in there. You're able to add more tag words. You're able to title your videos in a certain way. Your thumbnails can help grab attention in ways that it's a little more difficult when you're competing on a platform like Spotify, where you have Joe Rogan making $30 million on a contract. They're promoting his content. Like, not even when I was looking for Impact Theory as a podcast before I joined Impact Theory University, this is long before that, but even when I was looking for their podcast, typing in Impact, it wasn't just that simple. Like, they didn't just simply pop up as like an option for me. I like had to really do some digging to find them as a podcast. And there are large channels. So I can only imagine like for podcasts that are just starting out that don't have that large of a base, like Impact Theory is about to hit 3 million viewers on YouTube. They had, close to 2 million viewers on YouTube at that time. So it's like, if you're nowhere near that size and I'm having a problem finding that show, I can only imagine like how difficult it is. There's over 2 million podcasts out there. So if there's over 2 million podcasts, literally you are virtually impossible to find, especially on these larger platforms. But I just think it's a little easier to get in front of your audience on a platform like YouTube. I just think there's a lot of options. There's also the ability to interact with your audience because your audience can comment. I know that you can rate and review podcasts on Apple, but you can't have a back and forth dialogue with them. Your audience is not having a back and forth dialogue with each other. And you can see those conversations going on if you look at the YouTube comments for some videos. So if you put your call to actions in properly, you can kind of spark that interest and get people talking. So yeah, I just think YouTube is an opportunity that a lot of podcasts shy away from because it's difficult if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know the right things to look for. But once you know what to do and you kind of figure out some of the key foundational pieces, it is doable. It's very useful. And it's like just like really great opportunity for podcasts to leverage over some of the other options that are out there that are just audio. And in addition to, it's even better.
That's awesome. And I think it's so interesting that you talk about when you start off with a podcast, it's not really about having like all of the equipment that you think will make it perfect. It's really about, and I think Jenna Kutcher says this, it's really about like what you're saying in your voice and just that you're doing it and that you're doing it consistently and showing up and adding value. And it's not always about the microphone. And also you can start with something that is doable for you. And then you can like upgrade in the future. And like, again, like people are looking for the content and it's really not about the way it looks. And in terms of your podcast, I know you did, because you interviewed me, you did a Zoom video and then you recorded it as audio and you recorded it as video. And this is the process that I learned from you that I started to do. And then you put the audio to your podcasting platform and then you put the video to your YouTube. And then in terms of show notes, you do it in the description. So show notes are the description file and you can put kind of like your links. You could put your, if you're doing an interview podcast, you can put your guest links. And I think it's so important to do that because otherwise people don't have next steps or any action items after you're done. So yeah, just like the idea that like it doesn't have to be perfect. And also I know people can connect with you. There's an episode on my podcast with Delia, so just go to the show notes and look at any of her platforms. I'm sure she's going to have some more stuff coming out about YouTube. And yeah, if you need more information about kind of like the technical side of things, just watch the platform video again. Yeah. Just watch the platform video again, because I'm going to be going into like the actual process of it and showing you how to conduct a over email interview. Again, if you're not ready for a podcast, like just be truthful to yourself and honor where you are. It's not about pushing yourself to the point where you feel uncomfortable. It's really about doing what feels like the next right step. So if it's over an email interview, I could not have done audio. I had a problem with my voice due to anxiety and I was inaudible. Actually, when Delia interviewed me, she had to cut, I think it was 25 minutes out of my interview because I was inaudible, just completely inaudible. And it was like anxiety because the first 25 minutes, you couldn't hear me at all. And then the next 25 minutes, it was like joyous. It was really uplifting. And you wouldn't believe it was the same person within that hour, just because I felt more comfortable. She started talking about my books. So I really was joyful. So yeah, again, a lot of like podcasting is really making connections. And remember, just ask yourself, what's the next right step? So if podcasting seems like too complicated, you could always book a 30-minute clarity call with me, and I could work through it with you. Or you can start with an over email interview, which is in the platform video that I did for Summation 52. Again, do what's right for you. And it's really about the connections you make. So it's like getting to know people on the podcast. And sometimes it's not really about the audience you have, but it's about highlighting a person so that their audience can see them and that your audience can get to know someone. So again, like, it's really not about you, it's about the service you're providing and the value that you can bring, just highlighting someone and what their message is. So Delia, if you have one bit of advice for someone who might not feel confident, but in their heart they know a podcast is the next step, what would you say to them?
I would say keep it really, really simple for yourself to get comfortable with the process. There are a lot of pieces that goes into podcasting that can get a little overwhelming if you take it that way, or if you allow it to get overwhelming. But if you keep it simple, and during your interviews, rather than thinking about I'm going to be distributing this and I want thousands of viewers or I want thousands of listeners, and rather than thinking about that, just focus on the person in front of you and the conversation you're having with them. Make that the best time that you can. Really value that and focus on that first, because everything else that comes after that piece, the recording of your actual podcast, everything else is just technical, and it's a skill that can be learned. It's a skill that can be hired out to other people who do it. It's not even as deep as you're making it. So just focus on the conversation, one conversation at a time. Don't think about the next conversation. When I was speaking with Katie, I was focused on Katie and how I could help her be more comfortable, how I could highlight her. And I just wanted to show her in the best light and make sure that it was a great conversation, because I was in it selfishly to learn about her for myself. So when you're just genuinely interested, you can have a really great conversation and everything else can just fall into place afterwards. You don't have to make it, overwhelm you in any other way.
Yeah, and I'll just say final thoughts. Again, this is not one of the first modules, so this is probably not the one you want to start with. Don't get discouraged if you reach out to people who you want to be on your podcast and they don't answer you. It's extremely normal. So many people ignored me for so long, and I'm sure there's still people ignoring me, but you really get used to it. And then the people that are kind of like the people in your community are the people that you do get to highlight. So eventually people will start answering, especially when you're growing and when you have an audience and when your content has a voice, a clear voice, and people know that they can trust you and trust what you bring into the world, and that they can trust you with bringing their message to the world on your platform. So again, just trust yourself first. And thank you so much, Delia.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to do this with you, Katie.
Thanks.